Welcome to the Tug of More, where we just have conversations about how we know that God has called us to something great, and there's a tug from where we are to where we want to be.
Yeah, there's always a tension and a fight and a struggle if we actually want to achieve more.
Yeah, and so we've got some great friends today, John and Priscilla Boore. They're pastors in Las Vegas, and so, man, they're friends before they're pastors in another church.
Aww.
And so they just came and spoke
sweet.
for us this last Sunday.
Yeah.
We've known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
And while y'all are in town, we're like, let's introduce you to the audience and to everybody who's a part.
We're super pumped that you're here, and we're just going to have a real conversation today
Sounds
about
great.
ministry, life, leadership, and the tug of more.
Okay.
So we've known each other for 12 years. And so what I know is that you guys have some funny stories about ministry. This last time, Pastor John and Priscilla brought us in to go and speak at Anchor Hill Church in Vegas, which, by the way, if anyone's ever in Vegas,
That's the church
you'd
you gotta
better
go to.
listen. I don't care how much money you spend in while you're gambling. That's between you and Jesus. But you better give as much to Anchor Hill Church as you gambled when you go.
That's
Amen.
true.
We had some people in our church plan a trip to Vegas, and they were a little nervous about it because
They don't want to party too hard.
they had been to Vegas previously before Jesus and
That's right.
becoming new, and so they used you guys as the anchor to not go buck wild while they were in Vegas.
They knew they had to show up on Sunday.
That's right. They had a place to be and a time slot to be there.
Kept them in.
And one of them hit the jackpot,
What?
won $7,000, and they came and tithed to y'all.
Amen. Hey,
So
it's for the Lord, y'all.
For the Lord.
It's for the Lord.
Doing it for the Lord.
I don't know about what happened to that scripture about the storehouse, but they gave it to y'all on that Sunday. And
man.
so that's good. I'm glad.
You're funny.
And so I know that you guys have a bunch of crazy stories.
Oh, man.
Priscilla, tell them the one.
He starts laughing before he
It's
even
just such
said
a
it.
disaster.
I'm so glad it's hilarious to him. Yeah, it's okay.
So I was a youth pastor in Houston, and you guys were coming to that church to step into a pastoral role, and like you move into town, or just tell the story. It's ridiculous.
Oh my gosh. Well, it'd been maybe 5 weeks, and we'd moved from Tampa to Florida.
Yeah.
To Houston, Texas, and he went back for a wedding, and I was 6 months pregnant at that point.
Okay. Which is already humorous.
Right, because I become a house.
Humorous,
Like
right.
I'm barely 5'3". There's nowhere for the child to go.
Yeah,
So it's just
it's
I'm
out.
enormous.
Yeah.
Out. Very much out.
Yeah.
And so anyways, we went to church, went swimming after because it's ridiculously hot in Houston.
Yeah.
And decided to come in after being in the heat all day. And my daughter, who was like 4 years old at that point, who's like an angel baby all the time.
Aren't they all?
Yeah.
Except
really was.
except when they're not.
Except for when they're not.
No, she
And
really was. She was
she
sweet,
really was,
very
like,
sweet.
Such a good child. But out of nowhere, I fixed her some food. I was getting ready to get in the shower because I was, hot and dirty and gross from being in the pool. And she completely spazzes out. And I had poured her some milk, and she straight up grabbed the cup and was like, "I don't want milk," and like flung it across the house. And I was so startled by her reaction. I was like, okay, I'm gonna deal with you in a minute, but let me go clean up the house here. And I opened up the pantry door, and a plume of smoke came out of it. So then I was like, what in the world's happening?
Right.
And everything like kind of went into slow-mo. I started looking around, and smoke was coming out of all the light sockets. And so I like rushed to go grab her, and she just instantly ran to me. We ran to the door, and I opened the door, and the entire complex was on fire, completely ablaze. Like think of Backdraft, the movie, or whatever.
This
Oh,
gets
man.
funnier. Hang on.
Okay.
I know.
It's real
this ain't
serious
the-
right
this
now.
is not the
So
funny part.
just moved to a new city.
5 weeks. Didn't know anybody.
Husband's out of town,
Gone.
about to pop with a baby.
Pop a baby out.
Okay.
And so now I'm like straight up carrying my daughter
Yeah.
down the stairs, and legit 90 seconds later, the entire place implodes.
Yeah.
There's the fire trucks, and all the neighborhood is like in the parking lot. But so, like I said a few minutes ago, or whenever I started talking, I was getting ready to get in the shower
Right.
when all this happened. Okay. So there's a couple things that need to happen to get in the shower, right? Like, so you turn on the water, you take
Yeah.
your clothes
Yes.
You start taking your clothes off, right?
Yeah.
So I pulled my bathing suit out. And
Yeah, I mean, it's what you do to get a shower.
Yeah, it's what you do. It's what I do anyways to get in the shower. Right.
But luckily you grabbed something as you were leaving the house.
I don't even know why I did it in this order, but I took my swimsuit off, but kept my my cover up.
Your moo-moo.
It was like a moo-moo. Let's just be honest. It was a
now Whitney, she calls them what are they called?
Kimonos?
She calls them kimonos.
That's cute.
Because this one and Bailey and Rachel, they'll show up on a Sunday wearing a bathrobe like it's an outer garment. So
It is a kimono, though.
kimono.
It's a
it's
kimono.
a kimono
But this
slash
was a
robe.
full, like,
Slash robe.
yeah, outfit.
Yes.
Okay, so you're wearing a robe.
But it is see-through, right?
This, yep,
Yeah.
this
Not
is
even
not
a robe.
good.
This isn't a robe.
This isn't a robe. This is definitely a see-through.
It's a velour robe. Is it velour the word? Oh, I don't
It's
know.
basically swim lingerie.
Oh, whoa, okay. Super pregnant.
Yes.
I'm looking great. Like,
So
this
then
is amazing.
House is burnt
Burnt down.
It's collapsed.
Yeah, it's completely collapsed. I'm in the middle of the parking lot with felt like hundreds of people and
Right.
all the firemen in the city.
Right.
And I'm not decent. I don't
Right,
even have
right.
shoes on, but everything's everywhere,
Yeah.
basically.
Yes.
And I hadn't showered. And I'd
Right.
been at the pool. So
Oh,
I was
so you're
more
already a
conscious
wreck.
of how rank I was. Like,
Yeah,
I'd be
yeah.
in the pool all day. Okay, so the only people I knew in the city was our new pastor, right?
Of course.
Brand new boss.
Brand new boss.
Yeah.
She's known for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
He doesn't. I don't think he knows our last name at this point.
Yeah.
So that's the only phone number I had. I literally called him, and was like, "My house burned down, and I don't have anything."
And I'm naked in the parking lot.
And I'm naked in the parking lot. I'm gonna need you to come get me.
Oh my
And
word.
So he
did.
rolled up, took you to the store.
He straight rolled in like he had a Hummer. It was like a movie. I
Of
don't even know. It
course.
was like smoke everywhere. The
Yeah.
Hummer comes in the parking lot. I don't even know how he got in there, but he came, picked me up, and I have to climb into this vehicle. His whole family's in the back.
No.
And when I'm nervous, all I do is talk about the awkward. Like anything that's awkward that's happening, all I do is talk about that.
Yeah.
And so I just kept going like, "I'm so sorry I'm naked in your car. I'm so sorry. Like, oh my gosh, your wife must think this is nuts. I'm so sorry. I smell so bad. I know I smell. I'm so sorry. I thank you for rescuing me, and now I'm naked in your car."
Yes.
So they got you
literally-
clothed while this is happening. John's in an airplane.
Yes.
That's about to crash.
Well, it felt like it. It was one of the. It's happened maybe 2 or 3 times.
You travel
in
a
my
lot,
life.
speak all over
Yes,
the country, flying
I
into
do.
Houston.
Every now and then, like once every 7 years, there's like a little. I don't know what it is. It's an air pocket or something.
Yeah.
Where or it's just insane turbulence
Yeah.
where you just drop way farther.
This was like a different thing.
Then
though,
you're.
like,
Yeah. It was.
more than
It
normal.
was like people hitting the roof.
Screaming, throwing up,
Screaming.
the little
things
things
came
come
down.
out.
People praying, sign of the cross.
Right.
Yeah, it was one of those things. So that happens to me simultaneously. But what was interesting is when I land, she called me like right as I landed. But it was the weirdest moment.
Because you're
Because-
like, thank God I'm alive.
I'm like, thank God I'm
Yeah.
alive for sure. But she calls me and I'm like, hey babe, thinking I've got like
You've
the
got a big story.
He
craziest
had the
story.
news to talk about for that
She-
day.
and this is all
Yeah, my story wins. Nope. Naked in the car with our new pastor.
Nope. House burned down. But this is what she said. She goes, hey, babe. So she normally is like, how's it going? There's
Yeah, yeah.
there's a banter,
Right.
okay. So she goes, babe, I just want
This
you to
is
know.
a voicemail that I
No,
left her.
this was not a voicemail. I talked to you.
Oh,
It
I
was-
was PTSDing at
Yeah,
this point.
for sure.
Yeah, you have no
She
idea.
goes, babe, hey, you good? Okay, I'm good. Just want you to know the house burned down, but I'm fine. And I'm with Pastor. Go to his house. Bye. I was like, did she just say the house burned down?
Yeah, no.
No.
Pick up a gallon of milk. Oh, by the way, the house burned down.
Yeah. And it
I
was
get
like she
really
just got off the
calm
phone.
when chaotic stuff happens, which doesn't seem like that
Right.
would be for my personality. But when crazy stuff happens, I get really quiet and slow, and I can like process and see. But
Yeah.
But the people behind me in line, like I hung up and I go, did she just say the house burned down? Like, I don't know what she said. I didn't hear her. I think she just said her house. No.
So that day, the devil was trying to get y'all.
like at the
Something.
same time, trying to wipe us
Like
all out.
we can laugh. We laugh about it now.
Yeah.
When
It's funny now.
we were just in Vegas, they told us that story, and we were laughing so hard. Priscilla told us another story that is not appropriate.
not sharing
We're
it.
not sharing on this podcast.
They tried to cut it out, baby.
We laughed so hard we had to pull the car over and laugh on the side of the road. But like for real, that day, it's like the devil was like, you know what, the Boores, I'm done with them.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to deal with that. And I think that in ministry, sometimes the picture of the stage is like really beautiful and alluring. And it's like, I'm going to serve the Lord as long as I'm in the lights.
Right.
But what I've known about you guys in your whole ministry of being faithful is there's been some really hard seasons. And going to Vegas,
Yeah.
like, dude, Sin City, you're like in the gate of hell, like to reach people. And I can't imagine that it's always easy.
No, it's not always easy. And we were talking about this earlier. I always tell people that are inquiring about ministry because it's like you said, they're like, ooh, that looks cool. I want to be on the stage.
Yeah.
I want the accolades. I want people to see I want to get a bunch of likes. I don't know why people would want to do it. That's not really all we do. As a matter of fact, it's a small fragment of what we do. And what we tell a lot of people is like the longevity of ministry is not going to be connected to your ability just to get on a stage.
Wow.
It's going to be directly connected to your pain threshold. How much pain can you walk through? How much weight can you carry that nobody's going to see?
Wow.
That nobody's going to know about.
Yeah.
It's just going to be you and your wife, or you and like close people, maybe you and your pastor, your counselor, or however you do that. There's going to be very few people that will know the amount of pain and or weight that you're going to carry. And if you don't have some thick skin, that's why you got to know you're called.
Yeah.
Like,
For sure.
It's not one of these things that it's like,
This is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I could sell real estate, or I could do this. Like, I could do these things.
Right.
We tell people, go do it then.
Yeah.
Like, if
Yeah.
you could do something else,
You should go do
go
that.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it costs, and it's going to cause you a lot of pain.
Right.
'Cause
Amazing stuff, too.
Yeah.
Right.
But a lot of
It's
pain,
heavy.
too.
Yeah, Priscilla and I were having a conversation just earlier that like there are these wonderful seasons, but all throughout these seasons is coupled and mixed with some pain because in this life we have trouble,
Right.
but we serve a mighty God and He's
Yeah.
overcome. And so I think for us, that's something we've learned is
Yeah.
our ability to hold some pain, to carry it on broad shoulders. It's the only way to get through it.
It's like on one hand, there's great victory and excitement and celebration.
Right.
But in this other hand that nobody sees, you were crying the night before.
Right.
You were like brokenhearted. You're leading and bleeding at the same time is
Right.
what the Bishop T.D. Jakes says.
Ooh,
You've
that's
got to
a
be
good
able to
one.
lead and
That's
bleed.
good.
It's true.
And it's what it is. And so what are some of the things that maybe we've experienced that are the hard, like that are the parts that people need to know? So it's not only people in ministry.
No, anybody in
if you feel
leadership.
called.
Yeah.
Right.
Like we have a home builder in our church.
Yep.
He's called to build homes.
Right.
We have a guy we just talked with. He's wanting to open like a plumbing business.
Right.
He feels called. This is what the Lord's saying. If you're opening a salon, you're called to do that. If you're pursuing what God has for you, pain's coming, man.
Yeah.
The devil is real and he has a strategy. So what are some of the things that maybe we've walked through? Like we can laugh now about a house burning down.
Right.
But like, yes, that might have caused some like trauma, but it's not like you're laying up at night about that moment. It's more the
Right.
people stuff.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It is.
For sure.
It's that. It's people. It's walking through life with people.
Yeah.
Because if you care, you're going to carry their weight. You're going to carry their burden too, right? So
Right.
it's just not going to be, hey, let me just counsel you and pray for you. You're going to carry some of that with you. So
Yeah.
you've got to make sure we do the work of staying tender enough to keep caring, so that it doesn't just become robotic.
Right.
That's a problem in ministry. If you're just winging it, if you're just on like autopilot mode, people will pick up on the fact that you're on autopilot.
Yeah.
Which is why you have to take care of yourself. Which
Yeah.
is why you have to do the work to make sure that our heart stays the way God would want our heart to be.
That you don't get calloused.
Yes.
Like if you're working a whole lot with your hands will get calloused.
Yes.
But that's not good for your heart.
No.
No.
But as you're counseling with people and walking through their tragedy, a friend of mine who's a firefighter, he said his life is seeing the worst 15 minutes of people's lives. And sometimes in ministry, that's kind of what we do.
Absolutely.
We run into their burning building
Yeah.
of their marriage or their kids, their addiction or whatever. And that can callous your heart sometimes. So
Absolutely.
that's a piece.
I heard, I don't know who said it, but it was so good. And I've used it a couple times in my sermons.
So John Boores said it.
Yeah, so basically I came up with it.
Yeah.
But this is what he said. Oh, it was a guy named Darius Daniels. This is who said it. He said, there's a difference between a hardened heart and a healed heart.
Yeah.
Saying just because you don't feel it doesn't mean you're healed and whole. And so if you've learned to cope, that's not exactly what God would want for us. He actually, we got to learn to cope and we've got to learn to deal with the heavy things. But we've got to get to the place where that's not all we're doing. We're just not coping.
Right.
That we're staying whole and healed internally and emotionally. And it's going to be different for people how they get there.
Yeah.
Like some people may need counseling and exercise. Some people may need exercise and time off. It's going to vary by the person.
Right.
And I don't care how you get there. We just have to make sure we get there.
Yeah.
No,
It's so critical to do that.
No, we talk a lot about emotional health, even here on the podcast, that it's a super important piece of anybody who's trying to be a leader and trying to strive for more. And so for y'all, I mean, as you've walked through and navigated, how have you healed your hearts rather than hardened them? What's a strategy you've used?
Well, both of us went through a program called Transformation Ministries that was based out of Tampa. And it was a 6-month course, really, that helped to teach you some coping mechanisms, but also helped you to heal your heart from childhood wounds, from just what you carry in life as pastors, but for anybody doing anything is carrying pain from marriage, from childhood, from betrayal. And in the ministry, there's a lot of backstabbing stuff. Crazy stuff happening.
Which people don't think happens.
Yeah.
Right? You think that all these pastors and all these people, they're all just loving Jesus and praying in their office.
Because we don't show up like that on a Sunday or a Wednesday.
Yeah.
We show up smiling and inquiring about what's going on with you.
How are you?
Yeah, we're not dumping and like saying like, oh my gosh, I'm falling apart. I'm having this, and I just got in a big old fight with my kids. And
which was a shock for me. My mom and dad aren't in ministry. Mm-hmm. They're like the best people that attended church and taught Sunday school and all the things.
Right.
So I just assumed that all these people in ministry were all just angels.
Yeah.
Mike Tyson, he has a quote that he said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Right, yeah.
And so it felt like I'm just in ministry and I'm teaching and I'm preaching. I'm a youth pastor and doing all these things. And then, wow. And then I'm like, what? That's not supposed to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the people pain is maybe one of the hardest ones. You said the word betrayal.
Yeah.
And I think that betrayal is maybe the heaviest.
Yeah, because we're humans.
Yeah.
We're walking out our Jesus journey too, right?
Yeah. Right.
We're doing the best we can. And we're trying to, out of the overflow of our own life, be a support system for other people, right? But we don't get it right all the time.
For sure.
And if we make any type of mistake, I feel like
it's magnified.
It's magnified and exaggerated, and very little grace is given downwards, where I feel like as pastors, our heart is generally, it's like grace giving. It's to see and build life into people. And so we don't get it right every time. And there's very few people that stick with you if you've made any kind of mistake. And I think in ministry, it doesn't take a ton. Like, I get an email if I miss somebody in the hallway, just don't say hello.
Right.
They're not coming back to my church if I miss the hello one weekend or something.
Yeah.
But there's also, of course, been people that have lied and sabotaged and spoken about my kids. And so there's times where you're going, Lord, I need this healed because I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And I still want to help people, but I need a moment to process my own pain so I don't bleed all over everybody else. And
well, you just gave 2 really good tips. One, you got to talk to God about it.
Yeah.
But then like that program you guys went through, you got to talk to somebody else about it.
Yeah.
Like for Whit and I, and for Rachel and I and Aaron and Whit, we're all in counseling.
Right.
And that it's funny, the things that I'm talking to my counselor about the most is my childhood stuff, but then the childhood stuff that has attached itself to my adulthood stuff that all starts to get all jumbled up in a mess.
Yeah.
And then because I was hurt here and I was hurt there, it's now this wound that I carry around.
Yeah.
And it affects how you see everything.
Yeah, it does. Sometimes you don't operate at your best when you're hurt.
Yeah.
And sometimes the longer you're in the ministry, something that somebody said to you brings up something that somebody else said to you at some point in your life. And then so you start to feel like they are saying to me what that person back there said to me, and it really doesn't have anything to do with it. But that also comes to us as well in the ministry, that people have had bad experiences with pastors. And so they think you're going to do to them what somebody else did to them. Right. And so that's why sometimes we can get the like the vitriol of people, and you're like, yo, I'm not your old pastor. Like, I'm not your childhood pastor. Like, I'm just out here trying to be on my grind and be faithful to Jesus. I'm not the guy that said that to you back in 1984.
Right.
No, it's true. But we operate that way sometimes in ourselves. And then we make the assumption that they're thinking what I would think, or they're acting the way I would act. And I think, gosh, it can be so difficult.
Wait, talk about, because what John just said is something you've experienced a lot as executive pastor, leading the team, that people will be dealing with you, but they're really hearing their mom.
Oh, for sure.
Or they're really hearing, they'll talk to me, how their dad spoke to them.
Right.
And it's like they put somebody else's face on my body.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait.
No,
It's that childhood stuff.
Completely.
That if we don't dig it out.
I think, as leaders, we have to understand that the people we're leading, that they have their own hurt, they have their own pain, and maybe they have not been in an environment that's taught them how to heal it, and so instead they've hardened it. And so, I've experienced lots of times where, as I'm leading a team member or just coaching them on, hey, let's try it this way, instead they're hearing your failure, because that's what their mom used to say, or they're hearing you'll never succeed, because while I'm saying, hey, if you tried it like this instead, it might be more successful, they hear that voice instead that says, you screwed it up again, you're always going to be a screw up. And it's like, we have a great responsibility and opportunity as leaders to help coach and guide people to healing. And so for us, like, we have to set the example. We have to be the first ones, because if we harden our hearts, then we are creating a team of people with hardened hearts. And then if we're pastors, a church of people with hardened
and
hearts.
there's no communication happening. There's no real healing going to take place.
Yeah,
it's so tricky.
It is. And even like, this isn't even a new thing. If you go all the way back to the garden, so you're talking Genesis 3 and 4 here. After Adam and Eve fell, and God's in the garden, and he's like, where are you guys? And he says, we're hiding because we're naked. And he said, who told you that?
Who told you that?
And that's what ends up happening with us. Who said that about you? So that's just like a skill set that we've had to learn. And I encourage everybody to think about learning is when something happens, where stress happens, where conflict happens, to realize and to identify who's talking to me here. Like, am I hearing somebody else? Am I hearing my dad, my mom, whatever it may be? And you have to have that in the ministry as well. Like you've got, and then there's the spiritual component as well. There's the enemy component as well.
For sure.
Where the enemy is constantly attacking you in the mind. Where he's wanting to make you feel insecure about your calling, so you don't step out and advance it. And that we've had to do that with the church plant, because when we planted the church, and this was kind of a weird direction change, and I hope this is okay.
That's all right.
No, do it.
It was, I thought I was maybe too old to do it, because I'm watching people now being very successful at planting churches, and they're 28, 29, and 30. And I had only been a pastor for like 3 years at that point. I couldn't have planted a church at 28 years old, but I could hear the enemy going, it's not going to work. You're already too old to do this. You gave up all these years. I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe we shouldn't do that. And so that's just a part of this whole thing where, I've had to learn how to identify, okay, who's talking to me here? And then it always comes back to the best tip and or tool to be able to stay in this thing long term, which is what we were talking about, is it goes back to, first and foremost, I'm doing this for the Lord. I'm doing this for the Lord. I'm doing this because He called me. I'm answering this email again. Somebody thinks I said something to them that I didn't say to them because they heard somebody else's voice. I'm doing this for the Lord. The way that people can treat my wife. And some of y'all ladies can be really mean.
No, you're right.
In ministry. I don't know. Maybe it's just the West Coast, but some of the come on now.
Something she says all the time is the hardest thing for women in ministry is other women in ministry.
Oh, it's 100%. I get it way more from women than men, and way more than he gets it from anybody.
No,
for every one conflict he's in, I'm in 10. And so I'm like, of course, at times I'm like, what's wrong with me? Like, why do I stir this up in people? And I think it's complicated. I mean, that's a whole other thing to talk about. But like, I think that as a woman stepping into a leadership role, it can be intimidating to other women that either have been told they can't lead
Right.
They're sitting on their own callings and giftings.
Yep.
They've been put in their own boxes. But
Or their insecurity makes it so they only know how to stab.
right. It's like they instead of going like, go ahead, girl, go run, they're like pull down rather than encourage.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, at Anchor Hill, honestly, I'm still navigating through all that, going like, how can I empower these women in general? Lord, in my own life, how can I lead in a way that empowers women rather than causes insecurity or a feeling of lack in some way? Because women, for whatever reason, when they feel insecure, they can gossip and they can tear down. And so I know that as a woman, when I'm unhealthy and out of balance, my mouth goes, and don't talk to me after midnight. And you know that already. You're already warned.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
But
your filter is lost.
filter's down, right? But
Priscilla with the down filter is actually very hilarious too.
Oh yeah, I learned that firsthand a couple
So I
of
didn't mean to
times.
totally hijack that thought, but it is pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah.
but
No, but for us, what we try to keep in mind with that when it comes to other people coming on the team and women, I think that, man, there's a lot of room in the kingdom.
Yes.
yeah.
There's so much room in the kingdom
Correct.
that, like, Bailey is a leader here at Living Church. We've got Amanda, we've got Rachel, we've got a lot of ladies in ministry. And I think that if there's this poverty mindset of there can only be one first lady.
Right.
No, first of all, the first lady concept, we're not the
Yes.
president.
Right. What's happening?
Like, everybody can be elevated. All of us should be elevated.
Right.
Yes.
And I think if we would realize there's plenty of room in the kingdom, we would stop trying to pull each other down.
Yeah.
No,
Yes,
I
that's
think
good.
for sure that's part of the piece that's huge is that for a lot of us, we haven't seen a lot of women doing what we're doing,
Right.
leading in the ways that we're leading. And that's what it starts to look like. Well, there's only a couple of spots. And so we start fighting each other for the spot rather than elevating each other
Right.
and making spots,
Yes.
making opportunity.
Right.
And I think for all of us as leaders, if we can heal our hearts, we help create opportunity.
Right.
I think I've seen it though, dudes, even in men, like
totally.
that are like,
they're-
hey,
Oh yeah, come on.
they're holding,
Guys are
They're
super
like-
competitive.
Yeah.
they do it in a different way.
Yes.
They do it in a respectable, like, oh yeah,
Or-
I bench press XYZ.
Yeah.
But they do it with their ministry
Totally.
stats and all their.
Well,
By the way, I bench pressed 350 this morning.
Oh, you did?
No, I did not.
The thing with guys though is that, like, once we're done with each other, we're done. We get in
Outside,
a
out of
fight.
mind.
Yeah, and so like we kind of write them off and I'm like, they're an idiot. And so you don't really think about it anymore and we're not stuck. But I think with ladies sometimes,
Yeah,
if they're
no.
in a church and their husband's there, they feel like we have to stay in relationship.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a big
It's a
big
slippery, tricky
can of
cement.
worms.
It is.
But then
It's a big
it
can of
always
worms.
comes back to what I just said.
Yeah.
It's that ministry call.
Yeah.
Even with the navigating with the women and the relationships and everything that comes along with it, it has to be what anchors you.
Yeah.
It has to be what anchors you. That I feel like a broken record, but it's so true.
Yeah.
Which is God called me.
No, right.
God called me. It's what got us through the first 2 years of that church plant, which
Yeah.
is God called me.
So, okay. So with all the hurt and the pain and the things that we experience in ministry, have you guys ever wanted to quit?
How many times
Are we
this
allowed
week?
to say how many?
This week.
Okay.
This week. This
So,
month?
so the reason that I
Give us
asked,
a time frame.
so
'cause,
the reason I ask is because that feeling, we need to know we're not the only ones that feel it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
right.
But when we feel isolated, like, oh, I'm weak, I must not love
Right.
God as much. God might have removed his hand from my call, so I should just quit. No. You're not the only person that's feeling that if you feel like you should quit on the dream that God gave you.
Yeah, when it's not going at the rate that you thought it was going to go, I'm
Yeah.
referring to the dream.
Yeah.
That's when I don't know why you can begin to question am I doing, like, did I hear you right? I mean,
Yeah.
I had pizza before, so maybe that
Right.
messed me up and I
Yeah.
couldn't hear and I got an ear infection, so I'm plugged up.
Yeah.
What is that? Because we set expectations, more specifically if we're talking about ministry and maybe probably in business too. If you set number expectations, like my business is supposed to be here or my church is supposed to be here, my ministry is supposed to be here by this point in time, and if you don't get there,
Right.
it can start to do a number on your head. And when it moves from your head to your heart, that's when it becomes very challenging and very difficult. That's when you want to quit, because we had those days planting the
I
church.
feel like the whole first year, every Sunday, we were like, did we hear God?
Yeah.
Like, what did we I don't know. I don't know what I thought this was going to be, but it wasn't this.
Yeah,
It wasn't this.
then
This isn't what it was.
I mean,
to
John,
me.
you and I talked even after the pandemic.
Oh,
like,
man.
Vegas was hit way harder than Texas
Right.
was of like everything that got shut down.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, I'm starting over after starting from nothing.
Yes.
Right.
And one of the things I admire most about you guys is y'all could go anywhere.
No, right.
Like
No,
there's 100 pastors that would give anything to get you guys. I mean, I would give anything to get you guys to come here and be a part of what we're doing in
Right.
Mansfield.
Aw, that's sweet.
But y'all are called and you've said no to incredible ministry, even financial opportunities, but to stay faithful to where God has called you because you know God called you there.
Yeah.
Right.
But it was a process to get us to
Right.
that point.
Right.
You know, it was, so I go back to the first year and we had our worst Sunday that we'd ever had. We had like 80 people show up to church.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't come out here for 80 people. Like, this is not what we were at a really big church in Texas too. It was a great
Which
church.
is hard when you travel and preach.
Yes, that
like for
too.
me, I'll travel and preach to thousands in a stadium.
Yeah.
And then you come home where you're giving your blood, sweat, and tears, and there's 80.
Yeah.
It's a weird experience.
Yeah.
But I think that was part of the journey.
Yeah.
Is those 80 people, we just made the choice. We were given our life to
Yeah.
this city and
Yeah.
to these people, whatever that number was. And we had to reevaluate what was a win to us. Because when you're doing ministry on a large scale, we're just talking about numbers, right? Because I honestly think every corner pastor that has 50 people, they're the real heroes, honestly, to stay faithful in those hard scenarios.
Yeah.
But when you have staffs that are larger than some churches, when you have money coming in and really it's just about like, you can do what you want to do,
How do
and
we
you're not
divide the
struggling.
resource
How do
rather
you?
than
You're
where
more
do we get the resource?
exactly
Right.
like what do I
Right.
spend the money on,
Right.
rather than do we have enough to make
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
You have to really recalibrate what is a win, and every one of those people, investing in one of those people, became
sure.
a win in a different way than we hadn't experienced ministry in that way in a long time, and so we began to value people and see people in a different way, and honestly, I think it is why we have such a heart connection to the city, because we
Yeah.
know those people, we know those stories.
You're there for them.
They're not a number to us
Right.
anymore.
Yeah.
So, John, you were saying your worst Sunday ever.
Oh, yeah.
80 people.
Oh yeah. So it was, the next Monday was very depressing.
Yeah.
If I'm-
Okay.
if I'm
I
gonna be
don't think
honest with
we'd
you.
got out of bed before
Right.
noon.
Well, we would
Like-
have these, because we're talking about if we ever wanted to quit, right?
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
trying to be like super
Right.
honest.
Yeah.
I was ready to quit that Monday.
Yeah.
Because we had some people offer us what I thought I wanted, which was a church that was established with all the things that she just talked about. And so that was kind of in the back of my head too.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I don't really need to do this. Like,
We don't have to work this hard.
Like, I don't like have to do
Right.
this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Oh, right.
doing it, but do I really have to do this? And so we had the conversation. Just God had also blessed us. I would say blessed us, because we were never in the same place at the same time. Meaning, if I was high, she was low,
Yeah.
or if I was low, she was high.
Yeah.
Which created balance.
For sure.
So
Right.
Thank
I
the
was
Lord.
low,
Yes. Oh,
and she was higher at
Yeah.
the moment. But we had the conversation, and she said that she was like, okay, this is it. If the 80, let's say it's 80 people, and there's nothing wrong with 80 people, but at the moment, I thought that wasn't good enough, right?
Yeah.
For whatever reason, will we keep going? Like, are we going to do this? And it took me probably 5 or 6 days. It was a weird week for me too. Like, I talk about this sometimes where, like, probably 2 days after that, I was still really low. I was just driving in my car, and out of nowhere, I'm just at a stop sign, and I just start crying.
Which is so, he's
yeah,
so
because
not emotional.
you're even keel guy.
Oh, yeah.
That's not really like me.
Right.
That's not really for me. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what am I crying right now?
Yeah.
What is going on? And it was this wrestling with, I thought it was going to be more than this in my
Yeah.
head. And,
Yeah.
and maybe I thought if it'd be more than this, that it would give me more value than maybe I thought I had going into this. Like, I thought this would make me some big deal. I don't really know. Those are all the things questions I had
Yeah.
to answer
Yeah.
for myself. Long story short, we get to the end of the week and we're like, yeah, okay, if this is all it's going to ever be, man, we're going to do this. And it didn't turn around right away. Now, it began to grow, thank God.
Yeah.
But it helped me mentally and emotionally. And then you were just talking about this. We found ourselves there again on the other side of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we found ourselves again with about 80 people. after we had grown and had gone from 80 to hundreds, and we were getting there, and things were growing. It was starting to click, and money was coming. Like everything you need to kind of drive, it was all there.
Yeah.
And then it got
Then your
shut down.
momentum got ripped out from you.
Yeah,
Well,
staff turnaround, people leaving the city.
Yeah.
I mean, the entire city completely closed down.
Yeah.
Vegas closing for 8 months. The driving industry of Vegas is the service industry,
Right.
AKA the casinos, right?
Yeah.
But so people think the casinos and they think, oh, they're just a bunch of like blackjack dealers. No, man, there's restaurants and people that working in finance
Right.
and all kinds of like businesses created from them.
Yeah.
What did we lose? Probably a third of the people of our church were connected to that, and they moved out of the city.
Yeah.
Right.
So there we were again. And I think I called you.
You did.
Frustrated. I was like, dude.
Yeah.
There was like 84 people at church again.
Yeah.
And I don't know, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
And I said this to him, I don't know that I want to do this again.
No, yeah, you did.
Like, I already did this. Like,
Right.
I already said yes once.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it again.
Yeah.
I'm
No.
4 years older
Yeah.
in all of this. And we came to the same answer again quicker this time. Which is, we got to keep going.
No, when we were with you in Vegas just a few weeks back, man, we talked about it the night before your service, like just the heaviness and the difficulty of that season.
It's a tough city,
and
too.
the four of us left and went back to our hotel and we're like, man, I don't know if I could be that faithful. Like I was so amazed by your faithfulness and your yes. But y'all, I'll tell you that being there the next day and seeing what
The
God
life
is
change.
doing and the life change and the stories, I was weeping at the end because I was so overwhelmed by the goodness of God. And like your yes, your willingness to bear the pain is where the success came.
True.
The more that you're getting now out of people's lives and their stories, the testimonies, it comes from that tug and that fight and that struggle. And if you weren't willing to heal through the pain and keep leading while you're bleeding and like keep doing it, what would that pocket of Vegas be? I don't know. But those people and those stories, they wouldn't be what they are.
I like to believe that God has a plan for Las Vegas. And honestly, the way God has really shifted our heart and thinking about it is that like we're honored to be able to get to play a part in their story, in God's story for that city, more than it being our faithfulness to do something awesome there. It's more like, dude, we get to be part of this story because the goodness of God's heart, I believe he would have raised somebody else up. Somebody else, it would have been someone else's mission and vision for that place because where there's so much sin, more grace abounds. And I know that God's heart is for those people. And so it's like someone was going to pay the price of going to that place and seeing radical transformation.
Yeah.
And we get the honor to be those people.
That's awesome.
And that's kind of how we see it.
What a beautiful perspective.
Yeah.
It's selfless. It really is. I talk about, I think in heaven, it says that we're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. And I get this idea that there's bleachers in heaven, like over pockets of earth. And I think that heaven's watching and cheering you guys on. Because there's challenges in Mansfield.
Oh, right.
It's hard here.
Oh,
there's
sure.
things that we're navigating and
sure.
dealing with.
Hard everywhere.
But
It's
but
hard
it's a
everywhere.
lot different kind of hard.
Yeah, it's a different hard.
And man, one of the reasons that we love y'all and have invested and believe in Anchor Hill and you guys is because you're in a hard place, but you're tough people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And you said something right there before I almost rudely cut you off.
No, you're okay.
The great
We
point you were gonna make.
interrupt each other so
do it.
much.
It's a
This
thing.
is probably
It's a thing.
the least interruptions we've ever had.
No, it was-
Isn't this one?
Another reason that we knew, we couldn't quit, and that we just had the sense that God was with us is people like you. There have been people that have supported us.
Yes.
So there's people like you. There have been other pastors, other churches that have financially helped us to get through. But then there's our team.
Yeah.
Like we had not even been able to pay anybody yet because it's just the money hadn't come in the way maybe it could come in some other areas.
Yeah.
We have an incredible team of people who've just been serving with us
Yeah.
and loving on people and taking care of, helping us
sure.
take care of the church. Like we could not do
No.
it without them. We couldn't do it without you guys. And
It's definitely not been just John and I at all.
No,
And we
you've
have
got
a
a team.
team
Lord,
of
no.
amazing people that have given so many years
Yeah.
volunteering to see Anchor Hill be what it currently is. But
there's so many pastors who are in that position that they're maybe getting paid a little bit, but nobody else is getting paid, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And they know, just like we know, they wouldn't be where they are if it wasn't for that team of people who are there with them. But it's kind of God's gift to the church. It's God's gift to that leader to help them continue to go. And we just know that, man, we're grateful because of the people that have come alongside us. Like, it's not just our story. It's your story too. You guys have helped us impact our city and change people's lives. And so many of other friends.
That.
Yeah, absolutely. So many other friends that were like, when we had hard seasons, they were like, no way, man, we're going to come beside you and, make sure that we're with you. Buddy of mine in Houston, Jeremy Foster, pastors a great church, one of the most generous dudes I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, we got through our first year financially because of him in a church called Hope City out there. They helped us to get to budget every month because y'all, we weren't there.
Right.
It wasn't coming in.
Yeah.
And so we know, man, God, you've been so good to us. You've aligned us with some great people.
And
we
then
got to
the
keep
miracles,
going.
right? The miracles that we've seen in the pandemic, God allowed us to get a building when everybody else was shutting down.
Come on,
Right.
somebody.
We got
Let's
a
go.
building
Come on,
in the
right.
middle of this. So we're like, God, we're just going to keep saying yes and keep like stretching for more. Like it doesn't make sense to us, but we feel this tugging to
This
push.
tug of more.
This
Tug
tug
of more.
Hello.
of more.
It's a
You
good
see?
line,
Plug the podcast.
Okay.
Hello.
And that's
good.
what, and a building happened.
Right.
And then honestly, it miraculous. People started giving that had no idea that we were looking at a building. They were like, God woke me up and told me, like, what's going on with you guys? Like, is there something happening? And like thousands of dollars were coming in without people knowing that we were in the middle of this deal that we didn't have enough for, but we were just going to keep going till the door was slammed shut.
No.
Yeah.
So
We were
good.
able to renovate the building in cash.
Yeah. Well,
like, it's been insane.
What?
I remember the story. So you guys came in and spoke for us a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And we invested.
Yeah.
And then
Yes.
on the flight back,
Oh,
my
John just
gosh.
sits next to some rich business dude.
They upgraded us, right?
And he wrote you a check for
$25,000.
25 G's.
Yes.
And
So,
he actually
like,
gave it.
And he
But he
actually
said
gave it,
he was
but-
going to,
but
but
out
you
of
never
nowhere.
know. Yeah.
And so like ministry is not always those moments.
Yes.
No.
But it's always not these moments.
Right.
And we have to just stay faithful in
Yes.
both seasons to say,
sure.
hey, God, it's real hard right now, but I know you called me.
Well, and
Yeah.
if you find yourself like in a frustrating
Yes.
moment, it's worth one more tug.
Yes.
Like it's worth one more week of saying, "Hey, I'll show up again."
Yes.
And like if it's only 80 people this time, I'll show up the next
Yeah.
time, and I'll show up. And I think that if there's anyone paying attention today that feels that way, like just tug one more time.
Yes.
You-
And that's
you-
just the faithfulness of God, right? So it's the low moments are really hard and the
Yeah.
high moments are really high. And I guess that's a way to describe ministry is the highs can be really high and the lows can be really
Yeah,
low.
for
And when
sure.
you're really low, what keeps you to equilibrium is reaching back to those high moments. It's like
Absolutely.
David saying before he goes and fights Goliath, oh man, I remember the lion and the bear.
Yeah.
God's done this before, he could do it again.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how you find that balance. Like, okay, it's been a hard month, it's been a hard week, it's been a hard this, whatever it may be. You remember those high moments. And when you're really high, you also go,
Right.
okay, I remember those low moments.
Yeah.
So I don't want to live way up in the clouds either
Right.
because this could be around the corner. But even if I don't stay up here, I know God's faithful. And if we come down from here, I know God's faithful.
Yeah.
And if we get to the bottom, I still know God's
It's
faithful.
true.
But it's
good.
been a testing of not living solely out of emotion, honestly, more than
Yeah.
ever before. I mean, we've talked about it, preached on it, and everything else, but really, it's our faith that drives us, not the high moments. Because if you're just going on that, those
Yeah.
are short and in between, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The mountaintops are little, and
Yeah.
the base of the mountain, that hard climb is so much bigger, and so there's more struggle than there is peak times.
Yeah.
And so really, it is about just locking into that faith journey.
Yeah.
And our emotions can lie to us, can detour our path,
Yeah.
and make you believe that you're doing something wrong or God has left you
Yeah.
in the
No,
middle of
it's
this.
true.
And really, living out of emotion is painful.
So when it gets hard,
Yeah.
you got to talk to God about it.
Yeah.
You've got to talk to some people about it.
sure.
We've both said multiple times, we talked in hard times. I've called Pastor John when I've been dealing with things. You've got to have some people to talk about, and then you got to just pull one more time.
Come on.
Don't
give
let your
up.
hands be tired. The
No.
Bible says take a
Take a
new
new
grip.
grip. Come on.
Pull that thing because
got
God
to.
has more for you.
Absolutely.
Listen, really, if you're looking for a great pastor to follow and connect with, this team's incredible. Anchor Hill Church. Check them out. Really, if you're in Vegas, go.
Anchor Hill.
Worship loud. Drop some coin in that offering bucket. Bless them. some
That's
because we
right.
know there's more for you guys.
Yes.
Man, we
Love you
love
guys.
you.
Man, we love
Thanks
you guys.
so
Love
much
you
for
guys.
being
This
here.
is so awesome.
Yeah.